All right. Hello, everyone. So we're going to be talking about some child safety stuff today. Just a little bit about me. I am Dr. Dixon. I work at Children's of Alabama and an Albert Schweitzer Fellow. So working with CCDN to educate and promote child safety. So let's see here. Next slide. There we go. Okay. So again, just a brief overview. So just want to talk about awareness of how to keep your kids safe and we'll talk a little bit about different like child developments throughout the year, things that we kind of expect, and then obviously the risks that come with as they grow. And then just talk about ways that we can prevent these injuries. So this is for a survey that hopefully you all have already done, and just we'll go over the answers with yourself to look at the answers for those questions. So how do injuries happen? So let's see here. We know there are multiple ways that injuries can occur. So car accidents, drownings, burns, and a lot of those are considered preventable injuries. So things that we can do to keep them from happening. So obviously some stuff is inevitable. It's going to happen outside of our control, like if you're born with a disease or something like that. But there are a lot of injuries. Actually, the most common cause of death, as shown here, for kids is from unintentional injuries. And so we want to do our best to protect children from that. And so just a stat here, on average, an average of 12 children are injured every minute. So that's how common it is. Most people, of course, don't expect it to happen until it does happen. And so another stat here is that in 2007, there were more than 6 million reported unintentional injuries in the US. That number has gone up over the years. That's an old stat. But the most common cause of death for kids is unintentional injuries. As shown here, approximately every 1.5 hours, a child in the US dies from an unintentional injury, so like a car accident or a fire, like we talked about. In Alabama, we actually rank number 39 out of 50 for injury-related deaths in children, so pretty high on that scale. And then specifically in Alabama for car accidents, over 21% of the children involved in car crashes were not properly restrained. So not in a car seat or not in a seatbelt, if they're old enough for a seatbelt. And so why do we care about the injuries happening? Because they can have an impact on you. They can have an impact, of course, on your kid if they get disability from the accident that happened. But for you, you're missing days of work, or the kid's missing school days, the bills that we have to pay for, the kid goes to the hospital, and just the long-term effects, like, socially and mentally, that happen with injuries. And so we want to do our best to protect against those. And so, as it says here, there's been research, of course, on ways to what we can do to prevent the injuries, how we can educate people, and how we can promote safety. So, there's a question here. Can you think of any developmental ability or limitations that can increase a child's risk of injury? So just something you can think about. So first, starting with newborns. So of course, fresh baby, they can't do anything. So they rely on us 100% to keep them protected. And so they can't even lift their head and they can't feed themselves. All they can do is, cry. So one of the big things about this stage, how to keep a kid safe, is safe sleep. So there's a campaign called Back to Sleep that kind of focuses on things we can do to keep our kids safe. And so placing them on their back in a bed that has nothing else in the bed, a firm mattress, a fitted sheet, so no blankets, no toys, no anything around them that they can potentially suffocate on, is our best way to keep our newborn safe. So they can't move around much, but they can get hurt from just not being able to move their neck and stuff if they fall asleep. And so as the baby grows, they reach the infant stage. They can now start to sit up and balance their head, and they can roll, move things around in their hands now, and they start to put everything in their mouth. So what we can do is protect them from the things that they can get exposed to that they don't realize is harmful. So small objects that can easily get placed in their mouth and that are a big risk are two things that we talk about here, button batteries and magnets. So button batteries you probably see in like watches or like some remote controls have them. You don't realize that they are a really serious risk to kids. If they get them and swallow them, as a stat shows here, 54,000 ER visits from 2011 to 2021 were a result from just swallowing a button battery, and that resulted in 25 deaths during that time. And so the big issue with the batteries is that when it's swallowed, it can get caught in the esophagus, the feeding tube that connects from your mouth to your stomach. And it can, because of the chemical reaction that happens with the battery in your esophagus, the feeding tube, that can lead to a hole that can occur in your esophagus, and that can be deadly. And so what we can do obviously is try to keep things like that, away from the kid and not something that they can get exposed to, and just being mindful of our surroundings. Another thing that easily kids can swallow is magnets, so little small magnets. And so like a lot of the like buckyballs, I think is what they call them. They are in like toys, but they're also in other, like I said, remote controls, watches, fidget toys, all of the different things that you might not think about, that can easily be opened up, and again can expose a young kid to a risk. And so specifically, like I said, I work at Children's of Alabama, and specifically, I just did a research study on this, and we had, over the last 20 years, we had almost 200 children that we treated at our hospital for swallowing magnets. Probably about 30% had to get surgery, because when the magnets get inside, especially if it's more than one magnet that is swallowed, they can, have a reaction to one another, like that magnetic force that connects them. They can connect in different parts of the intestines, and that can lead to a hole or perforation that requires surgery. And so these are all things that are not like an easy fix or, easy to get over. And so we just have to be really mindful about what we, have around our kids. Um, and so just for specifically with the batteries, because like I said, that chemical reaction that happens, if you suspect that your child has ingested a battery, the first thing you need to do is obviously make your way to the hospital. But in the meantime, if you live far away from a hospital, you can give them honey. And so you can give 2 teaspoons of honey every 10 minutes for up to an hour. And that will kind of help coat the esophagus to protect from that chemical reaction that I said that can lead to a hole in there that can cause, death. And so, but obviously get to the hospital. That's your biggest thing there. And then for the magnets, if you only swallow one magnet, typically you're gonna just like pass it on your own. Like anything that kids swallow, to swallow coins, things like that, they should usually just pass that by itself, and it shouldn't require anything unless it gets stuck somewhere. But the big thing is if you think that they've swallowed more than one magnet, especially those tiny little balls, and we don't know, when they did it, if they did them all together, if they did them separately, obviously all that stuff puts it at a higher risk that this can cause injury that will need some surgical removal. So you want to get them to the hospital quickly as well. So that's that. Biggest thing that we can do, I know it's hard, kids move quick, but the biggest thing we do is watch. Watch them, make sure we have baby gates around the house, make sure we have the furniture, especially like TV stand and bookshelves and cabinets that are, on the floor. All those things need to be secured. And so you can secure the furniture to the wall. They actually now have these like little connectors that they sell with the furniture now, or provide with the furniture now to protect kids from it falling on the floor. So it'll stick it to the wall. Because that is a big risk, because kids like to, climb on things. And so we have seen where kids have tried to climb on a TV stand or climb on a dresser, and it falls onto them. And that can lead to death as well, of course, because it can suffocate them or it can cause a severe head injury. And so you want to be mindful about that. When you have your small baby, you don't want to leave them unattended, especially if they're like starting to roll and stuff, because they can easily roll right off changing table or roll right off of a table or wherever you bed or furniture, wherever you may have them. If you're not there close by, they can roll off, and that can lead to head injury. And like I said, unfortunately, these things can lead to death too. So you want to be mindful about that. For the car seats, when they're up, you want to keep them in a car seat that is facing the back of the car, so facing your trunk. The baby's facing the trunk. You want to do that, keep them in a seat like that until they're at least 2 years old or their height is bigger than the car seat. And then you could turn them around in the front facing car seat. So now they're looking at the back of your head now. And they need to be in that until they no longer can fit the height, weight requirements of that car seat. That is that. Also to keep your baby safe. So we will talk a little bit about burns that can occur, but you want to be mindful of the temperature of your water. So some people have really, really hot water that comes out of their faucet, and kids' skin is really thin. And so it's easy for that to result in burns. So we've seen kids come in where mom and dad was giving a baby a bath and didn't realize how hot the water was, and the baby was already in the water, and they have second-degree burns from just the scalding of the hot water. And so you want to definitely test the water beforehand. Like I said, especially in our newborns and infants who have much thinner skin, test the water first. Be mindful of when you're like walking around with hot water or you have hot food. Again, if that easily spills onto them, that can cause a burn. And then I also had here the poison control number. So 1-800-222-1222 is an easy number to remember. But if your kid ever has anything that they swallow, if medicine or detergent or anything like that, they swallow it and you're worried about it and you're not really sure what to do, you can call that number and they'll tell you kind of what next steps you should do, or just go to the hospital, I guess. But that's an easy way, especially if you live far away from the hospital or don't have the transportation to make it to the hospital, but you want to make sure that your baby's okay. That's a number to remember and put it on your refrigerator or somewhere to easily have access to it so you don't have to think about it, especially in a moment like that when you're scared and not sure what to do next. And then obviously locking up medicine, locking up household cleaners, anything that is, could be harmful to your baby. You want to keep that out of arm's reach. So now we get a little bit older. So 1 to 4 years old, now we can walk around, we can run, like I said, climbing on stuff, starting to ride our bikes. This is where they get really independent and don't want to listen to what you have to say, and they just want to do all things and explore. They're really, exploring now. And so these are some did you know facts about kids around this age, but they like to imitate you. You'll see them try and do the things that you do at this phase. They breathe quicker than adults, because their lungs are still developing. So that's just fun fact. Like I said, their skin is much thinner than ours. So when they get burned by things that we may get burned by, like hot water or something, it goes much deeper and can cause more injury than it would if we were to get burned by the same thing. And let's see. So things we can do similar to infants is watch them, supervise them as best we can. Baby gates for sure. For the playgrounds, if you're taking your baby to a playground, just making sure that they have soft surfaces to protect them because they're going to fall a bunch. So like the rubbery pads that they usually have on those playgrounds. Don't put toys or things that make a kid interested on top of furniture and stuff that they don't want to climb on top of. Of course, at this phase, everything is interesting. So just try to be mindful about what you have on shelves and stuff. I have a 1-year-old, so I have basically nothing on anything at this point because he has snatched everything down or is trying to climb on stuff to get to it. So my house looks like nothing, like nobody lives there because we've moved everything away. And then if you have furniture, make sure it's secured to the wall and make sure it's not by a window. Back in the day, a big thing, especially in northern states, they had a lot of issues with kids falling out of windows, just because they can easily climb on something